And what might that be? All right, so why is local investment so important? Because increasingly, we will need to be able to produce more of what we need closer to home. And though this is a little bit outside the scope of our talk about breaking up the big banks, I presented this last year, and I need to present it this year because the problem isn't going away. The two issues that are going to most profoundly impact our economy and our lives are peak oil and climate change. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with these terms, peak oil is the point at which we have extracted the peak amount of cheap fossil fuel beyond which oil starts to become less available and more expensive. I didn't look at what the cost of gas is here, but we're paying $4.18 where I live. And in 2008, gas, during the speculative bubble, gas got up to almost $5 a gallon. I literally saw people standing at the gas pump sobbing because they were having to choose between food for their family and fuel for their vehicles so they could get to work. And I got to tell you folks, this issue is not going away anytime soon. They expect that fuel or oil is going to get up to about $120 a barrel this summer, and the price is only going to go up. What that means is it's going to impact almost every aspect of our life. The food we eat, the cars we drive, the things that we buy. Exports or imports are going to become increasingly expensive. The good news is that it's going to offer some really good incentive for local entrepreneurs to start to produce the things that we need locally if they can access the capital they need to start up their ventures. So peak oil is kind of a frightening issue in a lot of ways, but it also presents some opportunities for smart communities that are prepared by using their capital to invest in a resilient future. According to the research from the U.S. Department of Energy, we have passed the peak of oil production and are currently in a flat period of supply and demand. Supply will start falling behind demand sometime in 2012, reaching a decline of 4% a year by 2015. DOE predicts that the supply of oil will drop by 63% in the next 20 years. The decline of cheap oil will have a dramatic impact on our lifestyles, which are now almost completely dependent upon cheap fossil fuels. This includes all the things I mentioned, the food we eat, the gas we put in our cars, the way we power our homes, and everything that we use in our day-to-day lives that is imported or transported beyond our hometowns. In addition, dealing with climate change and the increasing occurrence of extreme weather events will continue to call for greater changes in how we spend our resources and live our lives. What these convergences mean is that we are in for some serious structural changes in our economy and our way of life, whether we want them or not, and these changes may well be permanent. Unemployment will likely remain high, credit may continue to constrict, while government spending will decrease. I expect to see thousands of teachers across this country get pink slip this summer as states continue to cut education budgets. Maybe the unemployment rate is going down, but I'm expecting a big bump up in the summertime when the states start implementing their cuts. All this portends of an economic future that will likely be much more locally focused once importing goods becomes prohibitively expensive due to the end of cheap oil. Investing in local businesses so your community has the capacity to produce more of what you consume will create local security, local resiliency, and local jobs. In addition, we should consider taking action to prepare ourselves for the future by becoming more self-sufficient as possible in how we live. By doing so, we can more easily survive any shock to our current system, whether economic, energy, or climate related. In addition to pulling some of our assets out of Wall Street and investing them locally, we could also use those assets to invest in a more durable future by preparing our homes and our family for a future with less oil. So how can we prepare for the future? First and foremost, it's important to evaluate the sustainability of our current lifestyles. In a world that may include less access to oil and money, how will we live? It might be a good idea to consciously reduce our overhead and consumption to a lower level so that we simply need less money and less fuel to survive. This in turn can liberate us from the overspending and debt that has fueled some of the massive growth of Wall Street banks. Not only will reducing our consumption provide less fuel for Wall Street's growth, it also provides us more freedom from Wall Street debt. Smaller homes, bigger gardens, more efficient cars, use of public transportation, shorter commutes, and less stuff in general will help us all be better positioned to weather the future come what may. My husband and I envision an ideal future which includes a small straw bale or a passive home, a large garden within walking distance of our jobs and the services we need. And not only does this make economic and ecological sense, it also makes social and human sense. Consuming and using less means having to work less to pay for all the stuff, which in turn can provide us with an even more precious commodity than money. And that commodity is time. Time, as it turns out, is a critical component of happiness. We know from quantifiable research on happiness, aka subjective well-being, that humans by and large do not derive happiness from the accumulation of money and material goods. Income matters some, but beyond meeting basic needs, research shows that more money does not equal greater happiness. According to Dr. Daniel Gilbert, a psychology professor at Harvard University, there is a societal conspiracy to keep people in the dark about the real source of happiness. Quote, "If a society realized that money would not make people happy, its economy would grind to a halt," end quote. Research shows that happiness from the purchase of a big home, new car, the latest technology, or even an expensive vacation is usually short-lived. In addition, the downside is the stress of later having to pay for all those purchases that often greatly increase our debt and the money that we continue to give to big Wall Street banks so that they can become more powerful at the cost of the rest of us. By contrast, here's what research says does increase happiness. Beyond meeting basic needs, greater happiness comes from strong human relationships, from a sense of control over our lives, from meaningful work, good health, basic economic security, trust in others and in government, engaging in pleasurable activities, and all of these things take what? Time. All of these things take time. Developing strong human relationships take time, as does engaging with your community, helping others, and doing things you love. However, Americans actually work more than any other nation on earth, and not surprisingly, consume more than any other nation on earth. This leaves us with decidedly less time for the things that actually make us happy, but provides a whole lot of fuel to Wall Street banks in the form of our increased consumption and debt. Campaign finance reform is also a critical piece of the puzzle. As long as big banks can buy off members of Congress with impunity, as last year's Supreme Court ruling in the Citizens United case allowed, government officials will remain beholden to the interests of big banks rather than the people. The Fair Elections Now Act, introduced to both houses of Congress, would encourage clean campaigns. Let your elected officials know that you support it. Why? Because we need our political leaders to be on board and create good policies that can guide us during this critical time. However, they will have difficulty passing legislation to help us as long as they are under the control of big bank lobbyists and Wall Street banks. Congress needs our help. We can help shrink Wall Street banks down, make it easier for Congress to act, and improve our quality of life by taking the following steps. Number one, stop feeding the big Wall Street banks. Pay cash instead of credit whenever possible. Move your money out of big Wall Street banks into local community banks and credit unions. Pull some of your assets out of the stock market to prevent them from being held hostage and use them to invest in a durable future. Use some of that Wall Street money to help create local investment opportunities that can strengthen the local economy and keep more of your money circulating closer to home. We can reduce our dependence on Wall Street by reducing our consumption and becoming as self-sufficient in our lifestyles as possible. And regularly call and write your elected officials and make your voices heard. Doing these things will not only help us reclaim control over our democracy and our lives from Wall Street, they will also help shrink Wall Street banks so that Congress is better able to write laws that support the needs of average Americans and prepare us for the future. If we the people lead, our nation's leaders will follow. The time to act is now. As David Korten and President Obama said, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you.